Hi, I'm Gordon from Camera Labs, and this is my review of the Viltrox AF 85mm f1.4 Pro FE, a short telephoto, bright aperture lens designed for full-frame Sony E-mount bodies. Announced in June 2025 and costing around $600 or £570, Viltrox describes it as their new king of portraiture, and certainly the focal length and aperture are ideal for this kind of work. The price is roughly half that of Sigma's DGDN, or a third of Sony's latest G Master 2, but there are a bunch of third-party 85 1.4s at a similar or even lower price, so let's see what this one can do. At 85 by 109mm, the AF 85 1.4 FE is roughly similar in size to other lenses of this spec, but at 800 grams it is on the heavier side, at least compared to the 640 grams or so for the latest Sigma and Sony versions. But this does at least give it a reassuring heft, and the build quality certainly feels good. It's also sealed against dust and moisture, including a rubber grommet at the mount. Note the USB-C port on the lens mount for firmware updates. In terms of controls, there's a dedicated aperture ring running from f1.4 to f16 in third stop clicked increments, with an A position for body-based control. Meanwhile, a switch allows you to declick it for smooth operation. Between the aperture and focusing rings are an autofocus manual focus switch and a customizable function button. Finally, the manual focusing ring turns smoothly with nice damping. At the end of the barrel is a 77mm filter thread, and Viltrox supplies a cylindrical hood in the box that twists onto a bayonet. Next, for a focusing test on an older Sony A7R II body with the aperture wide open. Here you can see the lens pulling focus from near to far or back again in about 2/3 of a second with a small wobble to confirm. It's fairly leisurely on this older body, but I did retry it on a newer A7 IV, which was much snappier, albeit still not quite as fast as Sony's best. Next, here's a video I filmed with the A7 IV, where you can see it pulling focus confidently as the single area in the middle passes over the books and into the back of the cafe. This also gives you an idea of how well IBIS alone works on the A7 IV with this lens, not to mention how little focus breathing there is. Next, for face detection, again on the A7 IV, where the video autofocus works reliably. Note my test sample of the lens did struggle to focus for video on my older A7R II body, but again it worked just fine on a newer A7 IV. So I'm suspecting this may be a firmware issue, but ultimately be warned if you have an older Sony body. Again, here you'll see minimal evidence of breathing in this clip. Okay, now for my quality tests, and here I used my older A7R II as it was the highest resolution Sony body I had access to at the time. You're looking at my usual real-life distant landscape scene, shot at f1.4 here, and angled as always so that details run into the corners. Taking a closer look in the middle of the f1.4 sample shows excellent detail and contrast right out of the gate, which bodes well for portraits or other subjects shot wide open. Stopping down the aperture may bring very mild improvements to the ultimate crispness for the pixel peepers out there, but I'd say it's already performing pretty well. So let's return to the f1.4 sample here, before heading into the far corner. Here you're going to see some darkening due to vignetting, along with a little softness. It's not exactly bad, but equally it's not as crisp as the middle was at 1.4. As the aperture is gradually closed, the vignette lifts and the corner details become crisper. It's looking much improved by f2.8, while at f4 onwards I'd say it's performing pretty much evenly across the frame. Again, pixel peepers may see minor benefits to closing a stop or two further, but I'd say it's still looking pretty good at the larger apertures. Now for a portrait, the bread and butter of this kind of lens, and you can immediately see the signature here. The flattering perspective of a short telephoto, coupled with a large aperture that can pretty much obliterate most backgrounds. Here the subject is nicely separated with sharp details on the focused areas and smoothly rendered bokeh in the background. Taking a closer look at my eyes shows very crisp details, with the autofocus easily driven by Sony's eye detection even on my older A7R II here. Then there's a gradual fall off to my ears and substantial separation from the background behind. Here's another example where you'll again see the combination of sharp foreground details against a nicely rendered background. There's nothing busy about the bokeh here, and I'd say the lens is pretty much punching above its weight in price. For a more formal test of rendering, here's my bokeh ball test with the ornament near to the minimum focusing distance of 79cm. Now this isn't going to be particularly close for the macro fans out there, but it is in line with other 85 1.4s. In fact, a couple of centimeters closer than either the Sigma or Sony 85 1.4s can focus. But even though the subject reproduction isn't huge here, the focal length and aperture can still render nice large bokeh blobs, and here I'd say they're pretty well behaved too, with minimal outlining and no textures within. Like other large aperture lenses, there's some elongation of their shape in the corners, but it's not at all bad. Close the aperture to f2 and the blobs become more uniformly rounded with minimal impact from the diaphragm system. At f2.8 you'll enjoy more consistently shaped blobs across the frame, but now the 11-bladed diaphragm system has become quite visible with a more defined geometric outline to the blobs. Now there's no right or wrong here, just personal preferences to rendering styles. So do you prefer this kind of shape or more rounded blobs? Okay, now for my verdict, during which I'm going to show you more photos taken with the lens on an A7R II body. The Viltrox AF 85mm 1.4 Pro FE will delight portrait photographers on a budget, delivering excellent optical quality for subjects near and far at half the price of the Sigma and 1/3 of Sony's best. The focus details are very crisp with high contrast, while the defocused areas are smoothly rendered without any distracting busyness to mention. There's a small amount of softness in the extreme corners when wide open, but this quickly improves as you stop down and it's not going to affect the core purpose of this lens. Now when testing on my older A7R II body, the photo autofocus was leisurely but accurate, but the video autofocus hunted constantly. It pretty much didn't work at all. Now I suspect a firmware or other incompatibility issue though is when mounted on a newer A7 IV body, the photo focus was faster and the video focus worked just fine. So owners of older Sony bodies should do some more research, but if you've got a newer one, I'd say go ahead, you won't have any problems. But if you are using a modern Sony body, you will still find the focusing is faster on Sony's own native lenses, and their current options are lighter too. Plus you'll need a Sony lens to unlock their fastest burst speeds and their most effective stabilization too. But if you're mostly bothered by optical quality alone, the Viltrox is going to give you high-end performance at a much lower price than either Sony or even Sigma, making it a relative bargain for portrait photographers who desire the potential of an 85 1.4 but without breaking the bank. And that's it for this review. Let me know what you think in the comments, especially if you've got any experience with other reasonably priced 85 1.4s. If you decide you do want to buy the Viltrox lens, they're also offering 5% off when ordering directly using the code GL85145OFF. See the link below in the description. Thanks for watching and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.